Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian. And Josh, this holiday season, here's how I'm going to murder you. I'm going to get my hand possessed by an ancient, demonic, druidic... you know what? Forget it, Josh. I'm just going to take a ball peen hammer and smash your skull in.
You really? This is getting more disturbing each time you bring up this topic of murdering me, even when we're watching dark horror movies. It seems like you're really getting too into it.
Well,
coming up with these things.
Yeah, well, this one I was trying to stick to the movie here, but it just is a mishmash of nonsense. So I just went with the what do I have in the garage? Oh, a hammer.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
that'll lump Josh's head all good.
Wonderful. Well,
Smashy
what a way to start.
Smash. Happy holidays, everybody.
Well, it is Halloween is the holiday, so the dark, macabre stuff is appropriate, and that is why
Josh,
we are talking
macabre.
Well, macabre, it's a French word. Okay.
You don't have to acknowledge what I said, Josh. You could have kept going.
Let's clean that up.
Nah, leave it in.
Yeah.
So because of the season, we are doing a few special episodes here, looking at some spooky movies from some of the years that we have covered in our past seasons. And we just finally closed the book on 1992 in our last episode. And now we are taking a look back at another year that was very popular with listeners. That was 1999. And one thing that we did in our 1999 season for our audience choice was this very involved tournament that Jason kind of put together. Usually we just give a few choices and people pick one, but we had we got brackets and I don't even know. There was a lot of things in
Point
there.
Spreads.
Yeah, for teen movies, which were huge in 1999. And ultimately, the winner of that was Election, which we talked about in an episode. And we actually also did a bonus episode on the runner-up for that tournament, which was American Pie. Those movies, I feel like we were expecting to be winners or close to the winners. But one thing that really surprised us when we did that whole thing was how far this movie, Idle Hands, made it in our tournament. It was a semi-finalist. It was knocked out eventually by Cruel Intentions, which was itself knocked out before the finals. But still, I think this was a movie, Jason, you were the one who kind of put the whole thing together. And my impression, maybe I'm wrong, was that this was a movie where maybe we needed a certain number of movies. And so you just kind of threw it in there without expecting anything out of it.
Yeah, this was the Cinderella story, Josh, that the 16 seed beating the 1 seed, so to speak. Yeah, and then it just kept winning, It was a real March Madness style situation. But I just, there, like we said, in 1999, we could have put more teen movies in there. That's how many teen comedies were being made and teen movies in general. But you got to put this one in there. And I thought it would lose very early on. But like you said, it rocketed to the semifinals.
It did. And not only that, but I think we got a lot of responses from people when we posted these matchups that included this movie. We got a lot of responses from people who are really enthused, I think, about the potential for us to do an episode about this film. Dave, I believe your erstwhile co-host on other podcasts, Q, was a big fan of this film. Is that right?
Absolutely. One of those like college stoner things,
Yeah, I think they're going to be so excited that we're doing this episode. Their hands are going to be anything but idle while listening.
They're going to be clicking listen on this episode.
And like and 5 stars and all of the above. Yeah.
That's what they should. Following us on social media. There's lots of options you can do with your hands while you're listening to this thing.
If only we had the ability to possess people's hands to automatically click on those things for our podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Really, that's what we need, right?
That is really a good use of possession of hands, Josh.
I think so. Well, it's better than murdering people. And it's more positive.
Meh.
So I was somewhat surprised given the enthusiasm for this movie. I thought, this must have been big in 1999 and it just passed me by for whatever reason. But no, it was a huge failure. So this is a movie that I guess has become sort of a cult classic over the course of home video and maybe airings on cable things like that, which we've talked about a lot with other films.
I think, like Dave said, bunch of stoner kids in college just like, let's watch Idle Hands. And then it finds a place in their heart. And now 20 years later, they're trying to relive their youth through us, which is really a bad idea.
Yeah, there's nothing youthful about us. But at the time that it was released, it grossed only $4.2 million on its $25 million budget. So really massive, massive flop. It was apparently controversial because it was released not long after the Columbine shooting in the school shooting in Colorado. And even though to me, I wouldn't think of this movie particularly as offensive related to school shootings, I guess in part because the big climax does take place at a school dance. There was a lot of sensitivity around that. We've become so desensitized to school shootings now. It's like, this seems quaint, but that was apparently potentially a factor in this movie not making money at the box office. It was mentioned in multiple reviews that I looked up, so it was definitely a thing that was going on at the time.
I don't think they played it in Colorado around this time. And like we've talked about before, it's sad that, everyone's just like, oh, another day, another one of these, right? And they just move on. Now we can go get our chicken McNuggets because the school shooting of the day took place. But Joe Lieberman, former vice presidential candidate and senator, said of Idle Hands in Congress, he called it another grossly violent film targeted at teens that uses killings as a form of comic relief.
I mean, that is true, but I don't think it's something that Congress needs to be concerned about.
What does Congress need to be concerned about, Josh?
I think that's a separate podcast that possibly you can listen to with Dave and Q.
Probably on the All Points West like network.
But that is outside the purview of Awesome Movie Year, and I'm glad that it is.
All right. Well, don't get ready for Awesome Congress Year. But
no, never get ready for that.
in real life, in real life either. So.
Yeah. So I loved that this was nominated at the Teen Choice Awards for the Most Disgusting Scene Award, and it lost. It was nominated for a scene in which the main character's cat is found licking the severed eyeball of his dead mother, which seems like a good candidate for the Most Disgusting Scene Award, but it lost to the much, much more famous semen in the hair scene in There's Something About Mary.
I thought Something About Mary, wasn't that 98? I don't know, whatever.
I mean, it was the the awards maybe weren't by calendar year. I feel like those awards are happening in the middle of the year and they're just whatever fits in a certain time frame. I don't know. I looked this up, man. Okay. I found the answer.
Well, Josh, Jessica Alba at one point in time did win the Guy's Choice Award for Hottest Jessica. So that's an award.
That's horrifying that was a thing. So this movie, not only did it not make a lot of money, it didn't seem like even audiences were all that into it. It got a C+ cinema score from the audience polling service. And that's bad because again, that's the people who were most excited to see it. They went opening night and that was a very lukewarm response from those people. So it really took a while to win over audiences and fans. It seems like at the time, not really anybody was into it. I sadly couldn't find the video of Siskel and Ebert reviewing this movie because I'm sure that would have been very entertaining to watch. And they probably would have made some jokes about their thumbs having minds of their own, but it did not appear to be available online.
Do you think, Josh, that it took a while for people to catch on because this movie was ahead of its time, or should I say, a hand of its time?
No, you shouldn't say that.
God,
definitely not. So critics did not like this movie, although Roger Ebert was actually sort of generous to it. He said, Idle Hands samples other teen horror movies like a video DJ with a tape deck, exhibiting high spirits and a crazed comic energy. It doesn't quite work, but it goes down swinging with a disembodied hand. There's no really convincing comic inspiration behind the effects scenes, and although we might laugh at some of the goofiness, a movie like this works best when the effects are a means, not an end. The movie has energy and is probably going to attract a young audience, especially on video, since the R rating will keep away some viewers in its target audience, which is junior high school boys.
Interesting. I'd say high school boys also.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we were out of high school by 1999, I guess. So maybe we were too mature. We were too mature for this film.
No, I went to see American Pie when it was in the theaters, so.
Right. So, I mean, but I think Ebert is obviously he's right that this did find an audience on home video. And I can see this as the kind of movie that 13-year-old boys or whatever would want to see because it's got, gore and dumb jokes and boobs or whatever. But
in my estimation, not enough of any of those things.
Well, we could get into that, but that they would want to see it, but that they might not be able to go to the theater to see it. They might have to wait until, a parent could rent it for them at a sleepover or something like that. And that's how it would build its following because they watched it and it was semi-forbidden or whatever. And then they have that memory of it, Jason, like you were saying, the nostalgia that this builds up until now.
Do you have any movies like that from your youth? I would ask Dave, but he was already watching them with his parents, as we find out every week. But do you have any forbidden movies that you snuck through watching?
I remember, I don't remember exactly what the rules were that my parents had laid down, but I definitely remember when I was in maybe 4th grade or something like that, going to a friend's house and he had boxes of VHS tapes. And at least at that time, I must have not been able to, or not been allowed to watch R-rated movies. Cause I remember being really excited and we watched the first Police Academy movie, which sadly, I think we've discussed my weird childhood love for the Police Academy movies. And Cobra starring Sylvester Stallone. And I feel like there was one other. I have this very distinctive memory of getting these movies from this box and there were 3 of them. I don't remember what the third one was.
But Police Academy was a party movie and it had the shower scenes and when you're a young adolescent, those are the types of movies you were looking for on VHS there.
Oh yeah. And I was excited about it. And of course, the thing about the Police Academy movies was that they became this weirdly family friendly franchise. And so the later ones were much tamer, but the first one was an R-rated movie. And so I hadn't seen it. And so, maybe people experience the same phenomenon with Idle Hands. It's entirely possible. But critics, again, it didn't win them over.
Their hands weren't idle. They were too busy typing bashing reviews of this.
They were indeed. Other critics were not as generous as Roger Ebert was. Robert Kohler in Variety said, "The devil doesn't get enough of his due in the would-be horror romp Idle Hands, which will be most remembered as the 1999 movie that tried and failed to push Devon Sawa to the front of the teen star class. This demographically correct project is too calculated by half and underwritten by about as much, as witlessly unaware of its faltering sense of comedy as its stoner dude heroes are of everyday reality. Perhaps thinking he had a farce to play with, director Rodman Flender encourages tons of mugging. By overplaying what should be underplayed, Helmer and cast deliver a fatal stab to the intended comedy horror."
I would have overplayed it more, but what do I know?
Yeah, I kind of am with you. I think because this movie is trying to be, on the one hand, almost like Dead Alive or something like that we talked about in a recent episode. But on the other hand, it does have these rising teen stars and it has to showcase them in a Tiger Beat friendly kind of way or whatever. And it's sort of stuck in the middle ground that doesn't succeed at either of those things.
It's idling in a few of those things, Josh.
It is indeed. You've got so many puns in this episode.
You got to hand it. You got to hand it to me, Josh.
I will hand it to you. I will hand it to you with both hands. Good. So finally, Lawrence Van Gelder in the New York Times said, "Even pretensions toward the humorous and hip cannot save this blood-drenched film from its innate tastelessness, calculated to find its audience among those, like its hero and his friends, whose vapid lives are a celebration of truancy, marijuana, and junk food in a virtually parentless habitat that stretches only from bed to television set. The main question is whether the repentant Anton," that's the main character, "separated from his evil hand with the aid of a cleaver and his good-natured pals in the form of ghouls can get to the big Halloween dance in time to save Anton's girlfriend before the hand whisks her off to hell. The answer is not something that most moviegoers will want to pay to learn."
And most didn't.
That's true. But I did like that he's basically insulting the potential audience for the movie here in the beginning of this review.
I'm all for insulting potential audiences, especially on Dave's podcast, piecing it together where those slop pigs listen and slop up all the goodness we give them when we do trailers. Slop it on up, you piggies.
Yeah.
But if you're listening to this episode, we love you.
Yeah, that's a great endorsement for those piecing it together episodes.
But
yeah, I mean, he seems like he has sort of contempt for the potential teen stoner audience for this movie that it is aiming for. And it is aiming for that audience, and that's fine. That's a real audience, and they deserve to have movies for them.
Yeah. Stop embargoing those teen stoners movie industry. I mean, look, we've talked about this going back to like the 77 season with Kentucky Fried Movie. Like, there is a total stoner comedy audience and of all ages, and some really funny stoner movies out there.
There are.
You've written about a lot of stoner movies, Josh.
I have. I spent quite a long time writing for a cannabis magazine here in Vegas called Elevate. RIP Elevate no longer exists, but I did write about a lot of stoner movies. And in that process, learned, I think kind of already knew, but discovered even more that, Jason, as you say, there are a lot of really funny ones, a lot of really entertaining ones. I know you don't agree, but we did a whole episode about one of my favorites called Smiley Face. This movie is not one of them. This movie is not on any of my lists of stoner movies to watch. It is a very bad movie.
Name a couple of others that you really like.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I enjoy the Harold and Kumar movies. I think the second one's not so good, but the first one and the third one, the Christmas one, I feel like that's especially an underrated stoner movie. And I had noted down for the legacy here to talk about, maybe stoner horror movies, which is a real niche genre, but there's quite a lot of them, or at least more than you might expect there to be. But yeah, that's kind of what comes up offhand. But I mean, I think when we talked about Wayne's World, for example, even though that nobody gets stoned in that movie, I feel like those kind of like, jovial, slightly dim-witted buddy movies are often considered stoner movies, whether it's that or like the Bill and Ted movies or Beavis and Butthead or things along those lines. I do like Dude, Where's My Car? That's a stoner movie.
Yeah.
Good one. Duo of idiots.
I would say all the Apatow stuff, and especially Superbad, which we covered. My favorite is, which I think it transcends the genre, which I also think that Superbad does, is Dazed and Confused.
Right. And I think those are both movies that people don't really think of them as stoner movies first, but they certainly involve plenty of that activity.
Getting stoned.
It qualifies getting stoned. Exactly. I like those movies too, especially Dazed and Confused.
Dave, you want to throw any in there?
Half-Baked, Friday, How High, maybe.
Oof.
How High?
Yeah. Have you seen How High 2?
I have not, and I don't think I ever will.
No, that is dreadful.
Yeah.
That is really, really one of the low points. Anyway, speaking of low points, Idle Hands. Did you see this as a teen or in college, Jason?
Nah. I didn't even watch it for this episode.
Jason is high right now, barely paying attention to what we're doing.
He's wearing sunglasses for everyone at home.
Yeah.
He is wearing sunglasses.
That's true. I'd never seen it until this week, till we started covering it here.
Yeah. No, and I had never seen it either, despite, like I said, having written a lot of various stoner movie related articles over a period of years. I don't know if this was ever on a list where I thought, I should check that one out to see if it's worth including in an article. But I don't recall when it came out if I had any interest in seeing it. But
I didn't want to see it. It looked really dumb to me back then.
And it, in fact, is really dumb. So I had no real interest in seeing it. And this is, I think, why it was so surprising how many people were so enthused about it when we were doing this tournament, because it was not something that really crossed our minds as being of any interest. So maybe we will disappoint those people. I don't know. I thought this was awful. So I'll just say that right away.
I mean,
if you're an Idle Hands fan listening.
It was so popular, Josh, that like it gained such an audience. Did you know they were going to remake it with like Kelly Clarkson as the lead?
This is leading up to some joke.
They were going to call it American Idle Hands.
Oh, God.
That was. You're really proud of that one.
I'm not proud of any of these.
Or did you just come up with that?
I don't have any of these written, Dave. Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Dave, this seems like a movie that you would have seen as a teenager.
It does, but I don't remember ever watching it. Q, as you brought up earlier, is a big fan of this. he claims we watched this together many times. I must have been stoned or drunk or something because I don't remember it at all. So this is basically the first time I've seen it, at least sober.
Yeah.
I feel like that's best, where you had an enjoyable experience of being stoned and or drunk and you didn't have to remember seeing this movie.
Yeah.
Josh doesn't like it. Of course, I like the 80s prequel with the singer from Rebel Yell, Billy Idle Hands. I'm done. Let's move on. Okay.
All righty. No more puns. No more anything else on the background about.
Let's see. Nope.
All right. Well, we'll come back then in a moment and talk more of our general thoughts on Idle Hands. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this special Halloween episode, second of our special Halloween episodes this month, we are talking about an apparently very popular movie with some of our listeners from 1999 called Idle Hands, a stoner horror comedy. And I didn't like it, as we have already established, but I feel like, Jason, you liked it more than I did, or at least disliked it less. You want to start with something positive?
Yeah, I actually kind of was like totally, it was just fun, you know, like I won't go out of my way to watch it again, but I was amused enough by it. And that it was, and I like holiday, you know, fun, good movies. I mean, we just did Death Becomes Her, which really has nothing to do with any holiday. So, you know, I don't know why we did that for Halloween. But
well, it's kind of spooky and macabre.
Macabre.
Right. And it's supernatural. So, but yeah, it does not. This movie takes place on Halloween. So not only does it have the horror aspect, but it has the specific holiday.
Yeah,
aspect.
They lean into that nicely. A lot of it just goes nowhere. But a lot of it, you know, when they deliver something good, I enjoyed it. It's quick. It doesn't overstay its welcome, except for you. It's a good timepiece of the 90s when you could do something like this, I guess.
I mean, I will say it is quite a 90s time capsule between the cast and the soundtrack and the characters' obsessions with MTV and things like that. It very much feels, even though this is the end of the 90s, it very much feels like this kind of time capsule of the period.
Yeah, it was a referendum on the decade. I hear what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, and it has this sort of 80s hangover to it because the character played by Jack Noseworthy, the neighbor that they, for some reason, decide must know about satanic possession or whatever, is really into kind of 80s hard rock bands. That's why they decide that he must know about Satan, because he listens to one Motley Crue song. They just obviously could only license the one Motley Crue song. So they just play it like 4 times. He really likes Shout at the Devil. That is apparently the only song that he can play in his truck. And at one point he wears a Quiet Riot t-shirt, I think. So, I mean, these are the worst examples of satanic music that you could come up with. Like, at least have him listen to Cannibal Corpse or something.
I mean, you could have gotten rid of that character completely. You could have gotten rid of the Vivica A. Fox character completely. And that would have been fine. Like, those are worthless characters, right?
Yes, I would argue that this movie is full of worthless characters, but yes, I mean, Jack Noseworthy especially does absolutely nothing. His character is completely useless. It's not like he actually has some secret knowledge. They ask him, what does he know about hands being possessed? And he's like, oh. And the only purpose he serves is that when Vivica Fox's character comes to town and she's this sort of demon hunter who's been tracking the evil possessed thing that possesses hands. There's very, very, like, nothing is clear.
No, there's no explanation. And, you know, how did he get, so, but I just do want to say, Dave, Jack Noseworthy, the Encyclopedia Britannica guy, I always thought Josh looked like him. Do you remember that, Josh? How I always said you looked like the Encyclopedia Britannica guy?
Is that him, though?
I think so. And then he went, yeah. I thought so.
I think it's not him. I feel like we need to look this up now.
You guys look it up. I'll keep talking. But you are right, Josh, whether it is him or not. Like, so the hand just starts doing the thing and there's no explanation of it until like the middle of the movie. And it's like, you would think they could have explained that early in the movie to help, like, okay, this is why this is happening, right? And we do have a scene with Vivica A. Fox early where she tracks like the last person that was idly handed, right? And like they could have like been like, oh, here's what happened, and then it would have been set up. But they don't tell us anything until like halfway through. Also, another thing that happens is he murders his best friends because his hand murders him. And I thought the murder of Panub was like a fun murder, you know? That was a good decapitation.
Even the character names are this time capsule of dumb, like the worst of 90s pop culture.
But then they just come back, right? Like, and they're like, yeah, we're back. But did the parents come back at all?
No, no one comes back. This is a horrible, like, it's just so lazy, right? You want the friends to be undead because it's funny. Okay, fine. Fair enough. But there's no reason whatsoever. They're like, oh yeah, we decided we didn't want to go to heaven, so we just came back. Like, is that a thing that anyone can do? And you're absolutely right, Jason. It's so idiotic. It's like, it's insulting even to the intelligence of this potential like stoned teen audience, you know? Yeah, and Vivica Fox, the explanation that she does eventually give is so half-hearted, like, oh, it's this ancient entity that possesses the like laziest person that it can find and then decides to take someone to hell at midnight. Who? I don't know. Whoever. Why? Who knows why? I mean, there's no reasoning behind any of this whatsoever.
Also, this kid's parents were both murdered, and then he figured out, like, oh, I murdered my parents. He did not care at all about his parents being murdered.
No, he's a horribly unsympathetic character. And it's not just that he's lazy or that he's stoned. Seems like a complete sociopath. And the friends are even worse. The friends seem to be actively discouraging him from saving people's lives and doing anything to help anyone whatsoever.
Well, they got to get high, man.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but when they're getting high as a like deliberate way to avoid helping someone from being killed, it does not come off well. By the way, if Jack Noseworthy is not the person from the Encyclopedia Britannica commercials, it is some guy named Donovan Freeberg. So
well, I think I always thought Jack Noseworthy was the Encyclopedia Britannica guy, which you are. So I take it back. You are not Jack Noseworthy, but you are the Encyclopedia Britannica guy still.
Well, that's important for us to clear that.
Yeah. So Josh, you did not star in the Bon Jovi music video for Always, but you did tell me why it was important to have a set of encyclopedias in my home and how to call to receive them.
Yeah, we did have Encyclopedia Britannica in my house when I was a kid. So leave all this out, please.
No, leave all this in. People don't know how hard it was before the internet when you had to like look stuff up and research stuff.
Okay, back to Idlehands, please. I think there's some aspect of that like half-heartedness to the explanation of the mythology that's meant to be funny. Like to fast forward to the end, and not that this movie we need to worry about spoilers or whatever, but just in case. When they finally defeat the hand, right? Vivica Fox, who is this part of some ancient druidic order or something, right? She has this magical dagger that can defeat the hand, and they finally do it. She throws it at the hand, and it just goes right in, and then the hand like kind of poofs away. And Seth Green's character even is like, "That's it? That's all it was?" And I think that's meant to be sort of funny in like an ironic, anticlimactic way, and it doesn't work at all. But I could see that was kind of what they're going for. And then Vivica Fox immediately afterwards is like, oh, okay, let's go have sex with Jack Noseworthy. She doesn't even retrieve her ancient mystical dagger. She just leaves it on the floor.
Yeah.
So I don't think it worked, but I think it was meant to be fun.
Well, that whole sequence was a reshoot, the sequence there where they're in the auto shop, I guess, right? There was like, the original sequence was them in a pool, and they said it didn't work, so they did this whole auto shop sequence. Josh, I have a great quote from Seth Green where he told where he said this of Idlehands. He said, "The best thing about that movie was that everybody working on it had a different mission statement. We all thought we were making a different movie. Me and the boys, the other actors, Devon and Elden, we were convinced we were making a high drama with some comedic elements, and we tried to make our relationship as lifelong best friends believable. The director, Rodman Flender, was attempting to make a throwback Italian horror film like a Dario Argento flick. The writers really wanted it to be Heathers, and the studio was listening to the test marketing and saying that they really wanted the zombies to be cuter and have more wacky antics, And apparently all the kids in the audience thought that there should be more pot smoking, that pot should save the day, and somewhere, somehow, Jessica Alba needed to get her top ripped off. And that's how the whole new ending got shot, where she ends up on the car lift and gets her midsection ripped off and pot saves the day. Like I build a giant bomb out of a carburetor.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that Seth Green is aware of how terrible this movie is. And it doesn't surprise me that all of these people were trying to do different things with this movie. And I guess that studio conception or the audience polling conception of it won out because it is mainly that. It's not in any way remotely scary. It doesn't resemble a Dario Argento movie in any way. It's not funny, and it certainly isn't like emotionally resonant with the relationship of the lifelong best friends. They all seem like total dicks who hate each other.
Listen, here's my issue, right? Like when we talked about Dead Alive, right? What was so great is just how much he leaned into everything, right? And my thing is like, look, this is a teen movie. You want gore, you want dumb weed jokes, and you want nudity, right? Sex and nudity. That's what this movie should have been. They should have leaned into all of that. There should have been like 80s teen sex romp with a bunch of stoners and a bunch of like 80s horror murders. And that's where it should have gone, right? They didn't do enough of any of those things to make it really work.
Right. I mean, and I think Jessica Alba, even at this time, was probably too famous to agree to do actual nudity in a movie like this. But they do have that one scene where some random character that we've never seen before is topless.
Kelly Monaco.
There you go. So, you know, she's, she used to have, I think I've seen her topless in person maybe because she used to have a Vegas show.
I think my dad has a picture of her on the wall at Wax Tracks.
Wow. A lot of Kelly Monaco boobies in this
Yeah,
group.
I didn't recognize her.
I didn't either.
But that definitely feels like a scene. And I don't know if that was part of the reshoots, but it's like, here are these two characters who we've never seen before and never see again, that are having this makeout session, and then the woman takes her top off and then the hand comes and kills them. Like, it really feels like it was inserted solely because there was some note along the way, like, we need a topless scene. But yeah, I mean, I think more ridiculousness like that would have been good. Maybe more of the over the top stoner stuff would have been good. More gore. This movie is not.
I agree. And they set up that whole kill with Tanya where she's going to go through the blade, the fan, you know, and then they don't even show the kill, which would have been a great kill to show.
Right. And I wonder if maybe because this was supposed to be, even though it's R-rated, if it was supposed to be mainstream, they had to maybe like not have too much of that because that would turn some people off who wanted to see a stoner comedy. I don't know. It's clear that no one understood what this movie was supposed to be and that it ends up as this giant mess in the process. But the other thing about Jessica Alba, Jessica Alba is not a good actor. She's very, very attractive, but is not a very good actor. But also, her character is horrible. Her character is so incredibly stupid that she's practically seems like she's brain dead, to refer back to Dead Alive. The scene where she's like seducing Anton, the main character played by Devon Sawa, and he's busy trying to prevent his hand from murdering her. She is so oblivious. It goes beyond comedy into like concern for her mental well-being, I feel like.
Is that more of a commentary on how, you know, the teen love interests were treated back in the day?
Well, it's definitely some of that. I mean, she's definitely not treated as like a fully realized human being. Not that any of these people really are, but she is clearly just an object for him to obsess over. And even though he claims to be really wowed by her creativity, right? Her song lyrics that she writes, which he quotes these terrible song lyrics that she's written that he thinks are brilliant, but that never really comes back. You know, another thing where it's like, this seems like this is an important character trait, and maybe somehow it's going to be relevant that she's a musician. They go to a dance where there's a band on stage performing, and yet none of that ever comes up.
The band being The Offspring, who should never, ever, ever again be allowed to cover the Ramones. That was the worst part of this movie. Shame on them.
The only part of this movie that I was like amused by was when the hand scalps Dexter Holland.
Literally the best part of the movie. Yeah.
That really was.
Yeah. Josh, here's some fun facts for you.
I like fun facts.
When Anton is afraid and trying to search his house, he pushes his dog into the hallway before him. During the scene, the dog is clearly seen having an erection.
Oh, I missed that. That's great. Did you notice that, or did you only read this later?
I'm just reading stuff now, Josh. But I found here was something I didn't understand, and that I'm glad I looked up. You remember when he kills the 2 police officers, and Seth Green goes, "Go, go, Buffalo." I'm like, what? What is that? What does that even mean?
That.
Well, he says, "Go, go, Buffalo." By the way, the police officer kills were pretty fun, where he zaps one to death and everything.
Yeah, but again, it was just like kind of toned down, and it could have been gorier. If that's what you're going for, like, be Peter Jackson.
For it,
just
yeah.
Go for it, yeah.
But so he yells, "Go, go, Buffalo," and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, that's not a saying or something, right? So this is what I read about it. This is a reference to a deleted scene in which Anton remembers the 2 police officers as the head and the ass of the school mascot, Go, Go, Buffalo. But it's funny that they didn't leave the explanation of why that would make sense, but decided to leave the line in there. And the line, it's not an effective line. You could have easily have cut it, but they're just like, the first edit has it in. We'll just leave it in there.
And that scene sounds horrifying. I'm thinking that I don't remember if on the DVD that I got, if there were deleted scenes, but I'm almost morbidly curious to watch what even worse stuff they cut out of this movie.
That would be fun. Jack Noseworthy and Katie Wright, who played Tanya, did not know they were half siblings until they met on the set of this movie. Not sure how that one works.
Is that true? That's crazy.
Right. So that's a weird one. And then
it's a very weird one. I want to see a movie about that.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
way more interesting than the movie.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Right. And how do you get around to that? Like, at what point in the discussion do you go, wait a second? You're my sister. Yeah.
How does that even occur?
I don't know. But I'll tell you what I do know is that the theatrical poster for this movie can be seen in Dawson's Creek season 3 in the video store that Pacey and Dawson work at. And that brought me back.
Well, I think Rodman Flender directed some Dawson's Creek episodes, which is probably the reason for that. But I did enjoy Dawson's Creek more than Idle Hands, certainly. And that was what I was watching in 1999, Dawson's Creek, not Idle Hands.
All right. Well, Josh, I think the last thing we need to talk about is why isn't Devon Sawa as big as Tom Cruise?
It was weird because that was referenced also multiple times, that I guess he was on this sort of track to become this big teen star. And he'd been a child actor too. So he'd been around for a little while. And I think this was partly one of his efforts to do a slightly more, I don't know if mature is really the right word, but
older role.
Yeah, an older role, something that messes with this wholesome image that he might have had. And yeah, there's multiple people who talk about the idea that this was this attempt to make him a big star, and that obviously didn't work. I mean, this movie was a failure, and whatever else he did at the time, he didn't have any kind of vehicle to become that huge star. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really recall him being such a big deal around this time, but I guess he was a good-looking young man. I mean, I feel like also in this movie, they make him so greasy and dress him in these horrible, unflattering, baggy clothes that if he was a heartthrob, I don't know that anyone would get that out of watching this movie. I don't know. That all kind of passed me by. Do you recall the Devon Sawa phenomenon?
No, I just always knew his name. There was always like, oh, and Devon Sawa. Like, I don't know. Maybe I confused him with, is there who is a teen star? Devon, a female teen star.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I feel like there is someone who had a similar name who was a female teen star at the time. And I can't think of what it is, but you're right about that.
Yeah.
I think.
You should look up female teens named Devon.
Female teen star Devon. Yeah, I don't think that's really going to get us
Devon
any
Erickson?
useful results.
No, she's old.
Was it? It wasn't Aoki, right? Or something like
there
that.
is a Devon Aoki. But
yeah, not Devon Aoki. She was a little later than this, I think. I feel like.
Well, anyway, not the most memorable of actors, but he's still working a lot. But anyway,
he didn't become a huge star, but he managed to continue to have a career despite the failure of this film. So I do want to ask Dave, did you enjoy this?
Not really. I just, like you guys were saying, it just doesn't go far enough in any of the things it's trying to do. Like it's never funny enough. The gore is never out there enough. And even the stoner stuff isn't really all that funny. It's just
Yeah. Get more
Kinda
stone,
half-baked.
fellas.
Yeah.
Half-baked, Dave.
It's
Mm.
not funny. And I don't think I laughed at anything. And again, I just feel like I just hated these people. I just thought they were all awful. They weren't amusingly clueless. They were just really kind of reprehensible.
Well, let's rate it out of 5 idle hands.
I mean, obviously, that's what it's got to
Sure.
be.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like, yeah, this is cool. I'm down. I gave it 3. That's probably overrating it by a half or a full hand, but I'll stick with 3 because you guys are going to crush it. So.
Yeah, that is a generous rating. I'm going to give this 1.5 hands. This is honestly, I feel like one of the worst movies that we've talked about on this podcast.
I love
I
that.
won't say that it's the worst because I'm sure there's something else that maybe I Know Who Killed Me or something that beats this, but it's really quite bad. So, Dave, how would you rate this?
I'm going to go 2.5. I went 3 on Letterboxd because I was feeling generous, but I don't really feel as generous anymore. So I'm bringing it back down.
All right. I feel like that's the highest possible rating for this movie. But yeah, Jason, it's nice of you to be so generous.
I mean, it's probably 2.5, but I'll stick with 3. Why not?
Okay.
So.
No, stick to your guns. Don't.
I'm the people's choice of this group, Josh. So I got to stick
choice, the teen choice.
Yeah, I'm the hottest Jessica of this group, so I have to stick with.
You're the Devon Sawa of this group.
Well, no, that's not a good thing. I think you'd rather be the hottest Jessica.
Yeah. I've always wanted to be the hottest Jessica, though.
Yeah, of course. All right, we'll come back and talk about the legacy of Idle Hands. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this special Halloween bonus episode, we are talking about Idle Hands from 1999, an apparently popular movie with our listening audience that we have now insulted. So,
I mean, part of it has to be that I know you don't like her as an actress, but of the teen female stars, everyone had a crush on Jessica Alba back in the day. She is a stunning beauty, but you don't even think she was good on Dark Angel or anything like that.
I mean, I never watched Dark Angel, although it seems like the kind of show that I would have watched around that time, but I never did. So maybe she's passable in something that I haven't seen or that I don't recall. But I don't think that she was ever a particularly good actor. She is very beautiful, of course, and apparently is a very talented businesswoman.
Entrepreneur.
Far more successful there, than she ever was as an actor. But no, I can't really say anything positive about her acting abilities.
I mean, Honey.
I have seen Honey, actually. I think I reviewed Honey.
I think her best that I've seen her in is Sin City, where, she gets the Rodriguez darkness in there.
Right. And I think Rodriguez maybe has the right idea about where to put her or how to play to her strengths or whatever. So she works with him a bunch of times, including in the Sin City movies. And I agree. I think she is probably right for that. I did watch, I think the last really notable thing she did was that weird Bad Boys spinoff called LA's Finest.
Yeah.
And where she plays a cop, and that was not good. And she was not good in it. But yeah, she's like a billionaire. She founded the Honest Company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, what is it like? Is it baby products mainly, or is it also just regular beauty products?
I think it's all those things. Maybe it started for a company for women by a woman, right? Type thing. And now it's expanded out, but it was baby and mom products, I think.
Yeah. And that she sold the company, but she's still involved in running it. So she's hugely wealthy from that, far more than her acting. And again, she just kind of acts sporadically at this point, it seems like, when she feels like it, because she probably doesn't need to. And good for her. She's got like 4 kids or 3 kids or some number of kids. And she's busy with other stuff. And that's fine.
As you mentioned, Devon Sawa, he was a child star from Little Giants and Casper and Now and Then. And I think most people probably know him as Stan in the Eminem video.
Yeah, but as you pointed out, maybe he didn't become a massive star, but he certainly continued to have a career. He's not hurting for work. He does a lot of B movies and stuff like that. He's currently on the Chucky TV series, which is quite entertaining, and he gets to play like multiple parts on that. He's having a good time with that show, clearly. So maybe, in some cases, it's actually maybe better for these people not to become massively huge stars at the age of 18 or whatever, and it takes a toll on people, and he's probably more well-adjusted where he's at now.
If I could throw in there, he was recently in Glenn Danzig's Death Rider in the House of Vampires, which we covered for our 200th episode of Piecing It Together. And someone recently asked me where they can watch the movie, and so I actually contacted the distributor to find out, and they just replied, "We are no longer handling this movie." So I have no idea when anyone will be able to see it. So
that is weird how that movie has just disappeared. You would think that Glenn Danzig would be it, and his cult following would be enough to get it somewhere. But
yeah,
that's kind of amazing that he was in that, because he was also in the movie The Fanatic, directed by Fred Durst.
Mhm.
How many people have been in movies directed by both Fred Durst and Glenn Danzig?
What a career.
I guess, Josh, that movie's not about to see your light.
Oh, that's a lyric from a Glenn Danzig song. Yeah.
I like that.
That was not a very good one.
Oh,
not about to see your light.
Thank you. I think you need to go back to the idle hands puns. Those were working out better.
I'm over it, bro.
All right, whatever. So yeah, this movie was not a career launch for anyone involved, really. Rodman Flender, the director, did not direct another movie until 2014, although he's a very prolific TV director. As we said, I think he worked on Dawson's Creek and lots of other TV series, so he's doing fine, but certainly he did not get to be a big feature filmmaker. He directed one other movie in 2014, and then another horror comedy in 2019, which I'm sure is not very good, but it has a great title. It's called Eat, Brains, Love. So
nice.
That is, speaking of puns.
Actually, there's two things we should mention from Rodman Flender. It's his documentary work. I would like to see this. He did one of those like deep dives, like Dig, the movie Dig, about Brian Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't direct that movie.
No, he didn't direct that movie, but he did one called Let Them Eat Rock about a Boston band called The Upper Crust. For years and years, he followed them. And then he directed Conan O'Brien Can't Stop when Conan left the Tonight Show and went on tour.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's a reliable director for hire in those kinds of projects, but he never, if he was trying to be a horror visionary, like that quote from Seth Green implies, did not work out for him. He also had directed Leprechaun 2 before this, which I have seen. He's not going to be mentioned alongside Dario Argento on the horror legends list.
Seth Green directed a movie called Changeland. I've never seen that. Have you?
No. And Seth Green, I feel like, as far as entertainment goes, I mean, he's not a billionaire like Jessica Alba, but he's probably the most successful in show business coming out of this film. I mean, he was a pretty big teen star in the 90s and the early 2000s with his role on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff like Can't Hardly Wait and the Austin Powers movies. And he does a lot of voice work. He's on Family Guy. I mean, that in and of itself is just like a massive institution.
But he was in Buffy back in the day.
Right. He was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He co-created and produces and voices a bunch of things on Robot Chicken, which I was amazed to learn is still going. It just finished its 11th season earlier this year or last year or something. I had no idea that was still a thing.
He's won 3 Emmys for Robot Chicken, and they did a spoof of this movie on Robot Chicken called Idle Nuts about a disenfranchised ball sack with testicles, Josh, that just did whatever it wants.
Yeah, that sounds about right for Robot Chicken. And I haven't seen that, but I'd be willing to bet that that's certainly not less funny than Idle Hands.
Not less.
It's a funny concept, Josh. It's just teabagging everyone at will,
Hilarious. So, I mean, I kind of like Seth Green. He seems like the kind of, self-aware guy who's grateful for success. He's happy to make fun of himself, like in that on Idle Hands or whatever. So I'm all for Seth Green.
Penub, played by Elden Henson, was, of course, Fulton Reed in The Mighty Ducks. How did I let this one go? He's been in the MCU and he's in Hunger Games, stuff like that. So
yeah, and he's returned on the Mighty Ducks like revival show, right? Have you watched that?
I watched the first season, but once Emilio Estevez left because he refused to be vaccinated, I was out too. Although I wish he would have just gotten vaccinated,
Right. I know him as Foggy Nelson in the MCU Daredevil, his law partner. and he was a big part of the Daredevil TV series on Netflix, and is, I think, going to be in the new Daredevil
he is.
revival on Disney Plus. So I didn't realize he was such a big child and teen star. I was like, oh, it's Foggy Nelson, but I guess
No, it's
I never
Fulton
saw the
Reed.
Mighty Ducks. Yeah, I still have never seen any of the Mighty Ducks.
I really blew it in 1992 by not picking the Mighty Ducks. When we do a recast season, I'm going to do it. Josh, Vivica A. Fox is one of these actors like we talk about who has 1,000 projects in the works. She has 13 movies coming out or being developed or in production. She is like one of those big, huge, straight to video or streaming stars of the day right now. We talked about her in Independence Day also.
Yeah, and I don't know if we talked about this when we talked about her in Independence Day, but I feel like Dave is getting ready to discuss the amazing Vivica A. Fox Lifetime movie franchise.
Yes.
The Wrong something or other.
The Wrong insert.
Right? Dave, have you seen all of these?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much every single one. They're the best Lifetime movies. And I believe she produces them along with starring, well, she has like a cameo in each one. And she always has the titular line at the end of the movie, "You mess with the wrong," whatever the title is,
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's great.
There's like 20 of those, aren't there? Something like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there The Wrong podcast?
You know what? Not yet, but I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe 2023 is the year. We'll see.
Maybe they could combine that and Idle Nuts, and she could be like, "You mess with the wrong ball sack."
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say that, Dave, you should start The Wrong podcast, which is a podcast solely about those Vivica Fox movies, and you can go through one per episode.
I really should do that.
How is he going to do that with awesome Senate year and, feel the burns in development?
So many podcast ideas that are going on here.
But hey, Josh, one thing we didn't talk about is like Fred Willard, Connie Ray, Kyle Gass, Tom DeLonge, Timothy Stack, Mindy Sterling all had little cameos in this thing.
Yeah, and almost all of them more entertaining to watch than the actual stars of this film. So I was real disappointed when Fred Willard showed up at the beginning. He plays Anton's father who gets killed at the beginning of the movie. I thought, oh, hey, at least Fred Willard is in this. He's always amusing, but no, he just gets murdered immediately.
I just want to give one shout out to Christopher Hart, who plays the idle hand and played the hand in the Addams Family thing.
Yeah, that is a weird kind of acting that he does well. And I will say it to Devon Sawa's credit, during the parts of the movie where the hand is still attached to him and he has to do this kind of physical comedy where you believe that his hand is acting on its own. I'm sure that's not an easy thing to do as an actor and make it convincing. So I'll give him credit for doing that successfully.
I read that Christopher Hart has a show in Lake Tahoe at one of the hotels, and I'm like, that's perfect. That's what he should be doing. He
has a show where he just waves his hand.
No, he's a magician.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So.
That's we missed that essential detail, but yeah.
I think we missed a lot. We should just wrap it up.
I did want to note that the writers of this film never wrote another movie.
Wait a second. They're both doing well as TV producers and writers.
They are. Yeah. Yes, they've done a lot of, like Rodman Flender, they moved into working in TV and they did have a career, but did not ever write another feature film. So
yeah.
And good. So yeah, I think we can wrap this up. Did you want to mention anything else on the legacy of this film?
No, I was the one who said we should wrap it up.
I'm just giving you a chance just in case. All right, we'll wrap it up. That is Idle Hands. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Use your idle hand to click on us online and social media.
Josh, enough with the puns already, huh? Yeah, we're all over social media. Awesome Movie Year. If you like listening in an RSS feed, Awesome Movie Year on, that's .com, of course. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. I'm Gopher Jason on Letterboxd. Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy on the socials. Don't forget to check out Eat This Comedy or come to a trivia night, the Trivia Party, which we do all the time. Also on Instagram. My website, Gopher Jason. The idle hand saw it and ran the other way.
It was scuttering with its little fingers as feet.
Yeah.
My website, joshbellhateseverything.com, doesn't also have that much to recommend it, but check me out at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Twitter, and at Signal Bleed on Letterboxd. And listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where there's plenty of fans of this ridiculous movie.
Yeah, we did. I think that's where we got a lot of the feedback from people talking about how much they like this film. So hopefully they won't be too mad at our response to it. So Jason, it is still the Halloween season. We've got one more special episode to go. What is coming up in the next episode?
Hey, man, it's one of the big ones we missed when we covered 1980. It's The Shining.
Yes. Stanley Kubrick, Stephen King, certainly a major film from that year that a lot of people had mentioned to us when we were talking about 1980 on social media. So hopefully there's as much interest in that as there is in Idle Hands. Tune in next time for The Shining. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.